The twin suns of Destrum IV cast an ethereal glow across the undulating fields of orange vegetation. From orbit, the planet resembled a burnished copper coin, its surface a tapestry of metallic hues that shifted with the movement of liquid steel rivers beneath a thin crust of solidified alloys. This was a world unlike any other in charted space, a metal-rich planet where conventional biological life had evolved alongside inorganic compounds in a symbiotic relationship that defied traditional scientific categorization. Aboard the research vessel, Aurelius, Dr. Selka Rohn stood before the observation deck's panoramic viewport, her four-fingered hands clasped behind her back as she studied the planet below. The slight, iridescent sheen of her pale blue skin caught the reflected light from the binary star system, casting prismatic patterns across her angular features. As the foremost material scientist among the Krell-Nor expedition, she had waited nearly 2 standard cycles for this opportunity. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The voice belonged to Gera, her research assistant, who had approached silently on padded feet. The younger Krell-Nor's skin was a deeper azure, marked with the traditional scholar patterns of their homeworld, intricate whorls that designated academic specialization and achievement. "Beautiful and potentially revolutionary," Selka replied, her dual-toned voice carrying the characteristic harmonic resonance of their species. "The preliminary scans suggest that the liquid metal fields contain alloys we've only theorized about. If the automated harvesting units function as designed, we could return with materials that would transform our engineering capabilities." Gera's secondary eyelids fluttered in excitement, the Krell-Nor equivalent of a smile. The Council was wise to approve this expedition, despite the cost. Selka turned from the viewport, her expression growing more serious. "The Council approved because they fear the expansion of other species into this sector. Knowledge is valuable, but defense remains their primary concern." The ship's communication system chimed softly, interrupting their conversation. "Dr. Rohn, your presence is requested in the deployment bay. The survey team is preparing the first wave of harvester units." "Acknowledged," Selka responded, straightening her research uniform, a sleek, metallic fabric designed to withstand extreme temperature variations. "Come, Gera. It's time to make history." As they navigated the curved corridors of the Aurelius, crew members nodded respectfully to Selka. Her reputation preceded her, the youngest scientist ever appointed to the prestigious Krell-Nor Academy of Material Sciences, the creator of the self-repairing hull technology that now protected their interstellar fleet. She had earned their deference, though she had never sought it. The deployment bay hummed with activity as technicians made final adjustments to the harvester units, sleek, insectoid machines designed to traverse Destrum IV's treacherous surface and collect samples from the liquid metal fields. Selka moved among them, inspecting each unit with meticulous attention to detail, occasionally suggesting minor modifications. "Dr. Rohn," called out the expedition commander, approaching with a data tablet. "The final atmospheric readings are within acceptable parameters. We can begin deployment when you're ready." Selka accepted the tablet, quickly scanning the information. "The metal concentration in the lower atmosphere is higher than expected. Adjust the harvester's external coating to compensate." "Already done," the commander replied. "We've also detected unusual energy readings approximately 20 kilometers from our designated landing zone, possibly artificial in origin." This caught Selka's attention. "Artificial?" The preliminary surveys showed no signs of intelligent life. "Preliminary surveys can be flawed," the commander said with a shrug. "It's likely nothing more than a natural phenomenon we don't yet understand. But I've dispatched a small reconnaissance drone to investigate before we commit our valuable equipment to the surface." Selka nodded, but a sense of unease had settled in her secondary nervous system, an evolutionary adaptation that had served the Krell-Nor well through their long history. "Inform me immediately of any findings. I want to review the data personally." Hours later, As the first harvester units descended toward Destrom 4's surface, Selka sat alone in her laboratory aboard the Aurelius, reviewing the reconnaissance drone's findings. The energy readings were indeed unusual, rhythmic pulses that suggested intelligent design rather than natural occurrence. Yet there were no visible structures, no obvious signs of technology or civilization. A soft tone announced Gera's arrival. "The first harvester has successfully landed," the assistant reported. "Initial samples are already being collected." "Good," Selka said distractedly, still focused on the puzzling data. "You're troubled by the energy readings," Gera observed, moving closer to view the holographic display. "They don't fit any known pattern," Selka admitted. "And I don't like unexplained variables in my research environment. Perhaps we should divert a harvester to investigate directly." Selka considered this for a moment before shaking her head. "No. The Council was explicit about our mission parameters. We're here to collect material samples, not to satisfy scientific curiosity about anomalous energy readings." She closed the holographic display with a gesture. "Let's focus on what we came here to do." But fate, as it often does, had other plans. The next planetary rotation brought unexpected company to Destrom 4. As the Krelnor research team expanded their harvesting operation across the liquid metal fields, their sensors detected the arrival of another vessel in orbit. Unlike the sleek, crystalline design of the Aurelius, this ship was angular and asymmetrical, constructed of materials that seemed primitive by Krelnor standards. "Unidentified vessel approaching," announced the ship's alert system. "Configuration unknown. No match in database." On the command deck, Selka joined the expedition leadership, watching as the mysterious ship descended toward the planet's surface, directly toward the area where the anomalous energy readings had been detected. "They're landing approximately 18 kilometers from our primary collection site," reported the tactical officer. "Their trajectory suggests they're aware of the energy source we detected." The expedition commander turned to Selka. "Dr. Rohn, your expertise may be needed. If these are representatives of an unknown species, your background in xenobiology will be valuable." Selka had studied xenobiology as a secondary discipline, though her primary passion had always been materials science. Still, she nodded her agreement. "I'll join the contact team. Gera should come as well. Her linguistic skills might prove useful." Preparations for first contact were methodical and thorough, in keeping with Krelnor protocols. A small team was assembled, armed with defensive technologies but instructed to prioritize peaceful communication. Their transport, a sleek, hovering craft designed for planetary exploration, departed the Aurelius within the hour, carrying Selka, Gera, and 3 security specialists toward the unknown visitors. As they approached the landing site of the mysterious vessel, Selka observed it through the transport's enhanced viewing system. The ship was smaller than the Aurelius, with external features suggesting it was designed for both atmospheric and space travel. Its hull bore markings in an unfamiliar script. "Life form readings?" she asked the pilot. "Affirmative. The sensors detect approximately 12 biological entities. Oxygen breathing, carbon-based. Internal temperature suggests warm-blooded physiology." Selka processed this information quickly. "Similar to the theoretical models of species from oxygen-rich worlds. Fascinating." The transport slowed as they came within visual range of the alien expedition. Through the viewport, Selka could see bipedal figures moving around their vessel, setting up equipment on the planet's surface. They were clothed in protective suits that concealed their physical features, but their movements suggested a familiarity with their surroundings that implied either advanced technology or prior knowledge of environments similar to Destrom 4. "They've detected us," reported the pilot as the alien figures paused in their activities, several turning to face the approaching Krelnor transport. "Set down at a respectful distance," Selka instructed. "Let's not appear threatening." The transport settled onto the metallic surface of Destrom 4, its landing mechanisms adjusting to the uneven terrain. Selka took a moment to center herself, performing the brief mental exercise that all Krelnor were taught to prepare for significant events. Then, with Gera and one security specialist flanking her, she approached the exit hatch. "Remember," she said to her companions, "we represent not just this expedition, but our entire species. Observe carefully, communicate clearly if possible, and above all, remain calm regardless of what we encounter." The hatch opened, and Destrom the Four's copper-tinged atmosphere swirled into the transport. Selka's respiratory filters activated automatically, adjusting to the planet's unique atmospheric composition. She stepped onto the metallic soil, her specially designed footwear conforming to the surface. The alien figures had gathered into a small group, watching the Krelnor approach. One figure, slightly taller than the others, detached from the group and began walking toward them. Selka matched the gesture, moving forward at a deliberate pace while maintaining what she hoped would be perceived as a non-threatening posture. As the distance between them closed, Selka could make out more details of the alien's protective suit. It was less advanced than Krelnor technology, with visible seams and external support systems, but clearly functional for the environment. The being's face was visible through a transparent faceplate, a startling arrangement of features that included two forward-facing eyes, a protruding nasal structure, and a mouth with visible dental structures. Selka stopped at what she judged to be an appropriate distance and raised her hand in the universal gesture of peaceful greeting that had been theorized by Krelnor xenobiologists. To her surprise, the alien mirrored the gesture almost exactly. "Remarkable," Gera whispered behind her. "Convergent evolution of social signaling." The alien spoke, its voice carried through an external communication device on its suit. The sounds were unlike any language Selka had encountered, harsh and staccato compared to the melodic tones of Krelnor speech. Selka activated her own communication device, which began recording and analyzing the alien's speech patterns. "It may take time for our systems to establish a linguistic baseline," she said to Gera. "Until then, we should rely on non-verbal communication." She gestured to herself. "Selka," she said clearly, then motioned to the alien. The being seemed to understand. It pointed to itself and produced a sound. "Elena Marsh." "Elena Marsh," Selka repeated, the unfamiliar phonemes strange on her vocal apparatus. The alien, Elena Marsh, nodded, then turned and gestured toward the other members of its group, who had begun to approach. It spoke again, longer phrases that Selka's translator couldn't yet decipher, but the tone seemed friendly, almost excited. What happened next occurred with the sudden unpredictability that often characterizes pivotal historical moments. As the two groups converged, one of the alien figures stumbled on the uneven metallic terrain. In an instinctive gesture of assistance, a Krelnor security specialist reached out to stabilize the falling alien. Their hands connected briefly, but the alien's balance was already too far compromised. It fell forward, its protective suit scraping against a sharp protrusion of solidified metal. The suit tore, not catastrophically, but enough for a small amount of the alien's bodily fluid to escape, a viscous, red liquid that splashed onto the ground, onto a patch of liquid steel that had pooled in a natural depression. The reaction was immediate and horrifying. Where the red fluid contacted the liquid metal, a rapid transformation occurred. The shimmering, silver surface turned brown, then orange-red, the color spreading outward like a malevolent blossom. The texture changed from smooth liquid to rough solid, crystalline structures forming and disintegrating in chaotic patterns. "Back! Everyone back!" Selka commanded, her scientific mind racing to understand what she was witnessing. The metal was oxidizing, rusting, at an accelerated rate that defied all known chemical principles. The aliens reacted with equal alarm, the injured one quickly attended to by its companions, who sealed the breach in its protective covering. But the damage was done. A patch of Destrom-Fee's precious liquid metal field had been transformed into worthless rust in seconds. Both groups retreated to a safe distance, watching as the reaction slowly stabilized, leaving behind a dull, reddish-brown stain on the otherwise gleaming surface of the planet. "What was that?" Gara asked, her voice tight with shock. Selka could only shake her head, her multiple hearts racing with a mixture of scientific fascination and deep unease. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." The journey back to the Aurelius was tense with unanswered questions. Selka had collected samples of the contaminated metal, carefully contained in specialized storage units designed for potentially hazardous materials. The encounter with the aliens, humans, as their translation software had eventually identified them, had continued briefly after the incident. But meaningful communication had been limited by both the technical barriers and the sudden wariness that had descended over both groups. As soon as they docked with the research vessel, Selka headed directly to her laboratory, Gara following close behind. The rest of the contact team reported to the expedition commander, who would no doubt have questions that Selka wasn't yet prepared to answer. "Prepare the molecular analyzer," Selka instructed as they entered the lab. "I want to understand exactly what happened to that metal." Gara moved efficiently to ready the equipment, while Selka carefully transferred the samples from their containment units to the analyzer's receptacle. The machine hummed to life, its advanced sensors beginning the process of breaking down the sample into its constituent parts. "The preliminary results should be available in approximately 30 minutes, Gara said, studying the analyzer's control panel. Selka nodded, her mind already racing ahead to formulate hypotheses. "While we wait, let's review what we know about these humans." The translator was able to process some of their language before we departed. They moved to a different workstation where Selka called up the data collected during the brief encounter. "They're explorers, like us," she mused, scrolling through the limited information. "Their vessel's markings identify them as belonging to something called the United Earth Exploration Initiative. Their technology is less advanced than ours, but surprisingly sophisticated for a species we've never encountered before." "Do you think the contamination was deliberate?" Gara asked, her voice low. "A weapon of some kind?" Selka considered this possibility seriously before responding. "I don't believe so. Their reaction seemed genuinely surprised, even distressed. And if it were a weapon, why deploy it in such a limited and accidental fashion?" She shook her head. "No. I think we witnessed an unforeseen chemical reaction between their biology and Destrom-Fee's unique metallurgical properties." The analyzer chimed, indicating that its preliminary assessment was complete. Both Krelnor moved quickly to review the results. "That's impossible," Gara whispered as the data appeared on the display. Selka stared at the readings, her scientific mind struggling to accept what she was seeing. The human bodily fluid, blood, according to their database, contained compounds that had reacted with the liquid metal in ways that defied conventional chemistry. There were enzymes present that had catalyzed an oxidation process thousands of times faster than any natural occurrence. "Not impossible," Selka corrected, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Merely unprecedented. The iron in their blood contains an enzyme complex that acts as a supercatalyst when it contacts our liquid steel alloy." "But why would they evolve such a trait?" Gara asked, bewildered. "What evolutionary advantage could it possibly serve?" "I don't think it's purposeful," Selka replied, scrolling through the detailed analysis. "More likely, it's an accidental compatibility, or rather, incompatibility, between their biology and Destrom-Fee's metallurgy." She paused, a troubling thought occurring to her. Our own technology uses similar alloys. If their blood can oxidize Destrom's metals this rapidly... She didn't need to complete the thought. The implications were clear and deeply disturbing. The Krelnor depended on these specialized alloys for everything from spacecraft hulls to medical equipment. If human blood could render such materials useless, it represented not just a scientific curiosity, but a potential threat to Krelnor security. A message alert interrupted their contemplation. "Dr. Roan, your presence is required in the command conference room immediately," came the expedition commander's voice. "The council has been informed of today's incident and wishes to discuss the situation." Selka acknowledged the summons, then turned to Gera. "Continue the analysis. I need to know everything about this reaction, how it starts, how it spreads, and most importantly, how it might be neutralized." The command conference room was already crowded when Selka arrived. The holographic presence of the Krelnor High Council dominated the center of the room, 7 figures representing the highest authority of their civilization. Their images transmitted across vast distances via quantum entanglement technology. "Dr. Roan," acknowledged the council leader, her aged features set in grave lines. "We understand you witnessed a disturbing phenomenon involving the aliens encountered on Destrom 4. "Yes, council leader," Selka replied formally. "I've begun analyzing the reaction, though my findings are still preliminary." "Share what you know," instructed another council member, the representative of the science division. Selka described the incident in precise detail, then summarized her initial analysis of the human blood samples. "The enzyme complex in their blood acts as a catalyst that accelerates oxidation of our liquid steel alloys by a factor of approximately 8,000. The reaction appears to be self-sustaining once initiated, though it does eventually stabilize when all available reactive material is consumed." A murmur passed through both the physical and holographic attendees. "Is this a natural biological function or a designed weapon?" demanded the representative of the defense division, his posture tense even in holographic form. "All evidence suggests it's a natural biological component," Selka answered carefully. "The humans appeared as surprised by the reaction as we were." "That does not diminish the threat," countered the defense representative. "Whether by design or accident, these creatures carry within them the capacity to destroy our most valuable technologies. The implications for Krelnor security cannot be overstated." The council leader raised a hand, silencing further comment. "What do you recommend, Dr. Roan? You are our foremost expert on metallurgical sciences." Selka felt the weight of responsibility settle upon her. "I recommend continued research before any definitive action is taken. We need to understand the full scope of this phenomenon, its limitations, its potential countermeasures. Hasty decisions based on incomplete information could lead to unnecessary conflict." "And if research reveals that there is no countermeasure?" asked the representative of the cultural division, her voice softer than the others. "If these humans pose an inherent, unavoidable threat to our civilization simply by existing?" The question hung in the air, its implications chilling. Selka knew what some on the council were already considering: preemptive action against a potential threat, the elimination of a species before it could threaten Krelnor safety. Science often reveals solutions where none seemed possible. Selka replied diplomatically, "I ask for time to pursue those solutions before more drastic measures are contemplated." After a moment of silent communication among themselves, conducted via the subtle bioluminescent patterns that the Krelnor could produce on their skin, the council leader spoke again. "You have 48 standard hours. Dr. Roan, determine whether these humans represent a manageable scientific challenge or an existential threat to our way of life. The council will reconvene at that time to decide our course of action." The holographic figures faded, leaving the physical attendees in a room suddenly too large and too quiet. The expedition commander approached Selka. "You understand what's at stake, Doctor. The Council rarely grants even this much time when security concerns are raised." "I understand perfectly," Selka replied, already mentally cataloging the tests she would need to run, the analyses that might yield answers. "And I intend to use every moment wisely." As she left the conference room, a new message alert sounded. It was from Gara, and consisted of only 4 words. "You need to see this." Back in the laboratory, Gara's usual composed demeanor had given way to visible agitation. "I continued analyzing the samples as you instructed," she explained, leading Selka to a workstation displaying complex molecular diagrams. "And I discovered something unexpected. The human blood doesn't just oxidize our liquid steel. It transforms it at a fundamental level." Selka studied the diagrams, her scientific expertise allowing her to grasp the implications quickly. "It's not simple rust," she murmured. "The molecular structure is being completely reorganized into a form that could potentially be weaponized," Gara confirmed, her voice dropping to a near whisper despite the privacy of the laboratory. "If the reaction could be controlled, directed, it could disable Krelnor technology without harming the humans themselves." The idea was simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. "But there's no evidence the humans are aware of this potential," Selka pointed out. Their reaction to the incident suggested complete surprise. "For now," Gara agreed. "But once they analyze what happened, as we are doing, they'll reach the same conclusions. And then we have a more serious problem." Selka completed the thought. She moved to another console and began entering commands. "We need to establish communication with them, quickly, before misunderstandings escalate into something worse." "The Council may not approve," Gara cautioned. "The Council granted me 48 hours to determine whether the humans represent a manageable threat." Selka replied, "I can't make that determination without more information about them, their intentions, and their understanding of what occurred." Using the Aurelius's advanced communication array, Selka composed a message to the human vessel, keeping it simple and direct. An invitation to meet again, this time aboard the Aurelius under controlled conditions, to discuss the incident and its implications. The message was translated into the rudimentary human language their systems had begun to decode, then transmitted. The response came faster than expected. A mere 20 minutes later, the humans accepted the invitation but requested that the meeting take place on neutral ground, rather than aboard either vessel. They suggested a location equidistant from both ships, with limited personnel from each side. "A reasonable precaution," Selka conceded after reading the message. "They're as uncertain about us as we are about them." Arrangements were made quickly. A temporary structure would be erected at the designated location, a self-contained environment where both species could meet without protective suits, using separate atmospheric controls for each delegation. Selka would lead the Krelnor representatives, accompanied by Gara and 2 security specialists. The humans would send an equivalent number, including their leader, identified as Dr. Elena Marsh. As preparations for the meeting progressed, Selka received an unexpected visitor in her laboratory, General Huron, the military commander, whose vessel had been summoned by the Council immediately after the incident. His arrival had accelerated the timeline of events. His heavily armed warship now in orbit, alongside the research vessel Aurelius. "Dr. Rohn," he greeted her, his tall frame filling the laboratory doorway. "I understand you're planning to meet with these humans, despite the clear danger they represent." Selka straightened, meeting his gaze directly. "With the Council's approval, yes. Scientific understanding requires direct observation and communication." Huron's expression was skeptical. "Science has its place, Doctor, but security must take precedence. These creatures carry a biological agent that can destroy our technology. That makes them weapons, whether they intend to be or not." "They are sentient beings," Selka countered. "Exploring the galaxy as we are, the reaction between their blood and our metals was an accident of biology, not an act of aggression." "Yet," Huron added ominously, "not an act of aggression yet." He moved further into the laboratory, examining the equipment with casual interest. The Council has granted you time to investigate, and I respect their decision. But know this. My ship stands ready to neutralize the human threat permanently, should your diplomatic approach fail. The threat was thinly veiled, and Selka felt a chill, despite the laboratory's regulated temperature. I hope it won't come to that. General, conflict based on fear and misunderstanding would dishonor the principles of discovery that brought us to Destrom 4. Huron's expression softened slightly. We share the same goal. Dr. Rohn, the safety and advancement of our people. We merely differ on how best to achieve it. He turned to leave, then paused. I'll be monitoring your meeting with the humans. For your safety, of course. After he departed, Gara emerged from an adjacent room where she had clearly overheard the conversation. He speaks as if war is inevitable, she said quietly. It isn't, Selka insisted, though with less certainty than she would have liked. Not if we can establish mutual understanding with the humans. But as she continued preparations for the meeting, a shadow of doubt had crept into her thoughts. The stakes had risen considerably with General Huron's arrival. She was no longer simply trying to solve a scientific puzzle. She was attempting to prevent what could become the first interspecies conflict in Krelnor history. The meeting structure stood on a flat expanse of solidified metal, its temporary walls gleaming in the copper light of Destrom 4's twin suns. It was divided precisely down the middle, with separate entrances for each delegation and a transparent barrier between them, allowing face-to-face communication without physical contact. Selka arrived with her small team, entering the Krelnor side of the structure where the atmosphere had been adjusted to match that of their homeworld. Through the transparent barrier, she could see the humans arriving at their entrance, removing their protective suits as they entered their own atmospherically controlled chamber. Without their protective gear, the humans were even more alien than Selka had imagined. Their skin varied in shade, but lacked the luminescent properties of Krelnor dermis. Their movements were quick and efficient, using only 2 limbs for locomotion instead of the Krelnor's 4. Most striking were their faces, expressive in ways that seemed both familiar and utterly foreign, with features that moved and shifted to convey emotions. Dr. Elena Marsh approached the barrier, and Selka did the same from her side. The human scientist was smaller than some of her companions, but carried herself with an authority that transcended physical stature. Her hair, a feature absent in Krelnor physiology, was bound behind her head, and her eyes were a startling shade of green. Dr. Rohn, Elena said, her voice transmitted through the communication system that linked the 2 chambers. Thank you for arranging this meeting. We have much to discuss. Indeed we do, Dr. Marsh, Selka replied, noting with satisfaction that their translation systems were functioning more effectively after processing additional language data. The incident during our first encounter has raised concerns on both sides. I imagine. Elena nodded, the gesture similar enough to Krelnor body language to be recognizable. We've analyzed the samples we collected after the reaction. I assume you've done the same? Yes, Selka confirmed. The interaction between human blood and our liquid steel alloys produces a catalytic oxidation effect of unprecedented speed and thoroughness. We've reached the same conclusion, Elena said. What we don't yet understand is why. Nothing in our previous encounters with metallic compounds has produced such a reaction. Selka hesitated, aware that sharing too much scientific information could potentially provide the humans with knowledge that General Huron would consider dangerous. Yet, without honest exchange, no progress could be made. The liquid steel alloys of Destrom 4 contain rare elements not commonly found elsewhere, she explained. These elements, combined with the planet's unique electromagnetic field, create molecular structures that are highly susceptible to certain types of catalytic reactions. And something in human blood triggers such a reaction. Elena completed the thought. Specifically, an enzyme complex present in our hemoglobin, the iron-carrying component of our blood. Selka was impressed by how quickly the humans had identified the specific catalyst. Correct. This raises significant concerns for my people, as similar alloys are fundamental to much of our technology. Elena's expression grew more serious. I understand those concerns, Dr. Rohn, and I want to assure you that we harbor no hostile intent toward your species. We came to Destrom 4 as explorers and scientists, not as warriors. Your intentions may be peaceful, interjected one of the Krelnor security specialists. But your biology itself represents a threat to our civilization. Selka shot a warning glance at her subordinate, but the damage was done. The atmosphere in both chambers tensed perceptibly. We cannot change our biology, said one of the human delegation members, a tall male with dark skin and a defensive posture. Any more than you can change yours. No, Selka agreed, trying to diffuse the tension. But we can seek solutions that allow both our species to coexist safely. Science has overcome greater challenges than this. Elena seemed to appreciate Selka's conciliatory approach. We're willing to cooperate fully in finding such solutions. We've brought samples of our blood with various compounds added, anticoagulants, enzyme inhibitors, synthetic binding agents. Perhaps one of them might neutralize the catalytic effect. This was a significant gesture of goodwill, and Selka acknowledged it as such. We would welcome the opportunity to test these samples under controlled conditions. In return, we can share our preliminary findings on the specific molecular structures that are most vulnerable to the reaction. The meeting continued for several hours, with both delegations exchanging scientific information and establishing protocols for further research. Despite the occasional tense moment, progress was made. They agreed to continue communication and to conduct parallel research, sharing results daily. As the meeting concluded, Elena approached the barrier once more. Dr. Rohn, I sense that there may be political considerations on your side that extend beyond the scientific challenges we face. Selka was surprised by the human's perceptiveness. There are those among my people who view your species as an inherent threat, regardless of your intentions. And they may be advocating for more permanent solutions to that perceived threat? Elena asked, her expression grave. Selka couldn't deny it. I have a limited time to demonstrate that cooperation is possible, that the reaction between our technologies can be managed without conflict. Elena nodded slowly. We face similar pressures from our own leadership. Not everyone shares our commitment to peaceful coexistence. She placed her hand against the transparent barrier. We must work quickly, then, for both our peoples. Selka mirrored the gesture, her four-fingered hand separated from Elena's five-fingered one by mere centimeters of transparent material. For both our peoples, she agreed. As they departed the meeting structure, Selka felt a renewed sense of purpose. The humans were not the mindless threat that General Huron imagined them to be. They were intelligent, scientifically advanced, and genuinely interested in peaceful resolution. With their cooperation, she might yet find a solution before the Council's deadline expired. But upon returning to the Aurelius, she found Gera waiting with disturbing news. General Huron has been in communication with certain members of the Council, the assistant reported quietly as they entered Selka's laboratory. He's arguing that the meeting proved the humans' dangerous nature, that they openly admitted their blood can destroy our technology. That's a deliberate misrepresentation, Selka protested. They acknowledge the reaction occurs, but expressed nothing but peaceful intentions. Intentions can change, Gera pointed out. The general is exploiting that uncertainty, and he has supporters on the council, particularly in the defense and resource divisions. Selka moved to her primary workstation, calling up the data from the human blood samples they had received. Then we have even less time than I thought. We need to find a neutralizing agent, or a protective coating for our alloys. Something that will render human blood harmless to our technology. They worked through the night cycle, testing compound after compound, analyzing reaction rates and molecular structures with increasing urgency. The human delegation had provided valuable insights into their blood chemistry, and Selka's team made incremental progress. Certain synthetic polymers showed promise in slowing the oxidation reaction, though none stopped it completely. As the deadline approached, Selka prepared her report for the council with meticulous care. She would present the facts objectively, but emphasize the potential for a scientific solution and the humans' willingness to cooperate. It might be enough to buy more time, to prevent General Huron's militant approach from prevailing. The council convened as scheduled, their holographic forms materializing in the Aurelius's conference room. Selka presented her findings, demonstrating the progress made and projecting timelines for potential solutions. She stressed the peaceful nature of the human delegation and the mutual benefits of continued cooperation. "Your scientific diligence is commendable," Dr. Rohn acknowledged the Science Division representative when she had finished. "But General Huron has raised valid security concerns that cannot be dismissed." The general stepped forward, his imposing figure drawing all attention. "The fact remains that these humans carry within them a substance that can disable or destroy our most critical technologies. Their presence in this sector represents an unacceptable risk to Krelnor security. A risk that can be managed through continued research," Selka countered. "We've already identified several promising approaches." "Research takes time," interrupted the defense representative. "Time during which the human presence could expand. Their knowledge of our vulnerabilities could grow. The prudent course is clear. We must neutralize this threat while it remains contained." "By neutralize, you mean destroy their vessel and eliminate all evidence of the encounter," Selka said bluntly. "An act of aggression against a species that has shown no hostile intent." "An act of self-preservation," corrected General Huron. "The humans are a walking biological weapon, whether they intend to be or not." The council leader raised her hand for silence. "We have heard both perspectives. The decision now rests with the council." She turned to Selka. "Dr. Rohn, you are dismissed. The council will deliberate in private." Selka left the conference room, her inner sense of justice rebelling against what seemed an inevitable conclusion. The militant faction held significant influence, and fear was a powerful motivator in council deliberations. Unless she could provide more concrete evidence that the human threat could be neutralized, General Huron's solution would prevail. She returned to her laboratory to find Gera examining a new set of test results. "We may have a breakthrough," the assistant said, her voice tight with excitement. "The compound from test series 47B shows an inhibitory effect on the oxidation reaction. It doesn't prevent it entirely, but it reduces the rate by nearly 80%. Selka examined the data, hope rising within her. "This could be the evidence we need, if we can demonstrate a practical application." A priority alert interrupted her. The council had reached its decision more quickly than expected. Selka accessed the message, reading it with growing horror. "They've authorized military action," she whispered. "General Huron is to contain the human threat by any means necessary, effective immediately." "They can't be serious," Gera protested. "After all the progress we've made?" "Fear has overruled reason," Selka said grimly. "And unless we act quickly, innocent lives will be lost." She moved to the communication console. "I need to warn the humans. They deserve that much at least." "The communications array will be monitored," Gera warned. "Any unauthorized transmission to the human vessel will be detected." Selka paused, considering their options. "Then, we need to deliver the warning in person, and bring the test results with us. There's still a chance we can demonstrate that peaceful coexistence is possible." "How?" "The shuttle bay will be secured once military operations begin." Not the secondary research vessel, Selka replied. It's designated for my use in materials collection. As far as anyone knows, we're simply continuing our research while the military handles the human situation. They moved quickly, gathering essential data and equipment. Selka transferred the promising test results to a portable device, along with all the information they had collected on the human biology and the oxidation reaction. If nothing else, she could provide the humans with knowledge that might help them defend themselves. The secondary research vessel was small, but fast, designed for rapid deployment to planetary locations of scientific interest. They boarded without incident, Selka using her authority as chief scientist to override the standard departure protocols. Course set for the human landing site, Gara reported from the navigation console. Estimated arrival in 12 minutes. Too long, Selka said, checking the ship's sensors. General Huron's forces are already mobilizing. We need to warn the humans now. She activated the vessel's communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. Human vessel. This is Dr. Selka Rohn. You are in imminent danger. Krelnor military forces have been authorized to attack your position. Evacuate immediately. Repeat. Evacuate immediately. The response was immediate, not from the humans, but from the Aurelius. Dr. Rohn, you are ordered to cease transmission and return to the ship at once. Your actions constitute a violation of Council directives. Selka ignored the command, continuing her warning broadcast as their small vessel accelerated toward the human landing site. On the tactical display, she could see General Huron's warship deploying fighter craft, sleek, deadly vessels armed with weapons designed to neutralize enemy technology. Human vessel, if you can hear me, you have minutes at most. Your lives are in danger. Finally, a response came through. Dr. Elena Marsh's voice, calm despite the circumstances. We receive you, Dr. Rohn. We've detected the approaching vessels and are preparing for emergency departure. But our engines require time to reach full power. Head east, Selka instructed, toward the metal plains. The geological formations there will provide some cover from orbital targeting systems. We're coming to your location now with information that may help you defend against Krelnor weapons. Understood, Elena replied. And thank you, Dr. Rohn, for your warning and your courage. The communication ended as they approached the human landing site. Through the viewport, Selka could see the human vessel already active, its external lights pulsing as it prepared for emergency launch. But above, the first wave of Krelnor fighters was descending through the atmosphere, weapon systems visibly charging. They won't make it, Gara said quietly. Their propulsion technology is too slow to outrun our fighters. Selka made a decision then, one that would change the course of interspecies relations forever. Set an intercept course with the Krelnor attack formation. Gara looked shocked. That's direct interference with a military operation. It's treasonous under Council law. So is the unprovoked attack on a peaceful species, Selka replied firmly. I will not allow our civilization to begin its relationship with humanity through an act of genocide. Their small vessel shot upward, positioning itself between the descending fighters and the human ship. Selka opened a channel to the lead fighter. This is Dr. Selka Rohn. I am positioning my vessel as a shield for the human ship. Any attack on them must come through me first. Dr. Rohn, this is Squadron Leader Vex. You are ordered to clear the engagement zone immediately. Failure to comply will result in your being considered hostile. I cannot comply with an order that violates the fundamental principles of Krelnor ethics. Selka responded. These humans are not a threat. They are scientists and explorers like ourselves, seeking knowledge and understanding. Your sentimentality endangers our entire civilization, came General Huron's voice, cutting into the communication. These creatures carry a biological agent that can destroy our technology. They cannot be allowed to return to their homeworld with that knowledge. Knowledge that we can counter, Selka insisted. We've already developed compounds that significantly inhibit the reaction. Given more time, a complete solution is possible. There is no need for violence. The standoff continued, tense seconds stretching into minutes as the human vessel struggled to power its engines for escape. Selka maintained her position, her small research craft a fragile barrier between military might and innocent lives. Then, unexpectedly, another voice joined the communication channel, the council leader herself. "General Huron, hold your attack. Dr. Roan, explain yourself." Selka seized the opportunity. "Council leader, I have evidence that the threat posed by human biology can be managed through scientific means. We've developed compounds that reduce the oxidation reaction by 80% already, with further improvements likely. The humans themselves have provided valuable assistance in this research, demonstrating their peaceful intentions. The risk remains too great," General Huron argued. "Even a partially effective reaction could cripple our ships, our defense systems." "Which is why we need more time," Selka countered. "Time to perfect our countermeasures, to establish protocols for safe interaction. What we learn from this encounter could advance our scientific understanding immeasurably." There was a long pause, the council leader presumably consulting with other council members through their private communication channels. Finally, she spoke again. "General Huron, your forces will stand down. Dr. Roan, you will escort the human vessel to a safe distance from Destromfru, then return to the Aurelius. The council will reconvene to reconsider this matter in light of your new evidence." Relief flooded through Selka. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a reprieve, a chance for diplomacy and science to prevail over fear and aggression. As the Krelnor fighters withdrew, Selka contacted the human vessel. "Dr. Marsh, the attack has been called off for now. I'm to escort you to a safe distance from the planet." "Understood," Elena replied, her voice steady despite the obvious tension of the situation. "And afterward, what happens to you, Dr. Roan?" "I will face the consequences of my actions," Selka said simply. "But they are consequences I can accept, knowing that innocent lives were spared." The human vessel had managed to power its engines by this point, and it rose slowly from the surface of Destromfru. Selka's smaller craft positioned itself alongside, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough to provide assistance if needed. As they ascended through the atmosphere, Elena spoke again. "Dr. Roan, before we part ways, I want you to know that humanity will remember your actions today. You risked everything to prevent conflict between our species. That courage will not be forgotten." "It wasn't courage," Selka replied. "Merely the application of Krelnor principles to an unprecedented situation. Our highest values demand that we seek understanding before resorting to violence." "A principle worth defending," Elena said, "and one that humanity shares, despite our biological incompatibilities." They continued upward, leaving Destromfru's copper-tinged atmosphere behind. Once they reached a safe distance, beyond the effective range of the Krelnor warship's primary weapons, Selka prepared to turn back. "This is where we part ways," she told Elena. "My people will need time to process what has happened, to adjust to the knowledge of your existence." "As will mine," Elena agreed. "But perhaps, when tempers have cooled and science has advanced, our species might meet again under better circumstances." "I believe we will," Selka said, surprising herself with her certainty. "The universe is vast, but curiosity and the pursuit of knowledge are universal constants. They will bring us together again." With a final exchange of scientific data, including Selka's promising research on neutralizing the oxidation reaction, the two vessels parted. The human ship accelerated away, its propulsion system leaving a distinctive energy signature against the backdrop of stars. Selka watched until it was merely a point of light among many, then turned her vessel back toward the Aurelius. Gara, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke. What happens now? Now we face the council, Selka replied, with evidence and reason as our only weapons. The return to the Aurelius was solemn, their small vessel docking under the watchful eyes of security personnel. Selka was immediately escorted to the command deck, where the holographic presence of the full council awaited. General Huron stood to one side, his expression unreadable. Dr. Selka Rohn, began the council leader, her tone formal. You have directly contravened a council directive and interfered with a military operation. These are serious charges. I acknowledge my actions, Selka replied, standing tall before the assembled authority of her civilization. And I accept whatever consequences the council deems appropriate. But I maintain that those actions were necessary to prevent a grave injustice. You permitted a potential threat to escape, General Huron said. A threat that could return in greater numbers, armed with knowledge of our vulnerabilities. I prevented the massacre of peaceful explorers, Selka countered. And in doing so, I preserved the honor of the Krelnor people. We are not conquerors or exterminators. We are seekers of knowledge, of understanding. The Science Division representative leaned forward. Your research on neutralizing the oxidation reaction, it shows genuine promise. Yes, Selka confirmed. With continued work, I believe we can develop complete protection for our technology against the effects of human blood. The humans themselves provided valuable assistance in this research, demonstrating their commitment to peaceful coexistence, or their desire to understand our vulnerabilities more thoroughly, General Huron suggested darkly. If their intentions were hostile, they would have collected samples of our technology and departed long before military action was authorized. Selka pointed out. Instead, they remained engaged in scientific exchange and sought mutual understanding. The council members communicated silently among themselves, their skin patterns shifting in the complex language that supplemented Krelnor verbal communication. Finally, the council leader spoke again. The council recognizes that this unprecedented situation required difficult judgments. Your violation of protocol cannot be dismissed, Dr. Rohn. But neither can we ignore the ethical considerations that motivated your actions. She paused, her expression softening slightly. You will continue your research on neutralizing the human biological threat. General Huron's forces will maintain vigilance in this sector. But no aggressive action will be taken against the humans unless directly provoked. It was a compromise, one that neither fully vindicated Selka's actions nor embraced General Huron's militant approach. But it was a path forward, a chance for science and diplomacy to prevail over fear and hostility. Thank you, Council Leader, Selka said, bowing her head in respect. I will dedicate myself to finding a solution that ensures the safety of our people while allowing for peaceful contact with humanity. As the council session concluded, General Huron approached Selka. His posture was less confrontational than before, his expression thoughtful rather than angry. You took a significant risk today, Dr. Rohn, he said quietly, for beings you barely know, whose very existence poses a threat to our way of life. I took a risk for principles that define our civilization, Selka corrected him. The pursuit of knowledge, the preference for understanding over violence, the recognition of sentient rights regardless of species. Huron considered this for a moment. Perhaps, he conceded, but know this, I will be watching the skies. If these humans return with hostile intent, I will not hesitate to act decisively. I would expect nothing less, General, Selka replied. But I believe that when humanity returns to Krelnor space, it will be as friends and fellow explorers, not as enemies. Time will tell, Huron said, turning to leave. For all our sakes, I hope your faith in these creatures proves justified. In the days that followed, Selka devoted herself to her research. The promising compound was refined, tested, and improved upon. Gera worked alongside her, their shared experience having forged a deeper bond of trust and respect. Together, they developed a synthetic coating that could be applied to Krellnor technology, rendering it resistant to the oxidative effects of human blood. One evening, as they were reviewing the latest test results, Gera asked a question that had clearly been on her mind for some time. "Do you think we'll see them again? The humans?" Selka looked up from her data analysis. "Yes, their curiosity matches our own. It's only a matter of time before our paths cross again." "And when they do, will we be ready?" "We will," Selka assured her. "Not just with technological defenses, but with a better understanding of who they are, of the potential for cooperation despite our differences." She moved to the laboratory viewport, gazing out at the twin stars of the Destrum system, their light a reminder of the duality that existed in all things: danger and opportunity, fear and hope, the unknown and the understood. On a workbench nearby, a sample of Destrum-Free's liquid metal sat in a sealed container, a streak of rust-like oxidation marking its otherwise perfect surface. It was a testament to the unexpected encounter between two civilizations, a reminder that the greatest discoveries often came from the most unanticipated circumstances. "When they return," Selka said quietly, "we will greet them, not with weapons drawn, but with questions ready. For that is who we are, not warriors defending territory, but scientists exploring the unknown. And in that shared pursuit, perhaps humans and Krellnor will find common ground that transcends our biological differences." The rust-like streak in the metal sample caught the light of the twin stars, glowing with an almost ethereal quality, no longer a symbol of destruction, but of transformation, of change that, while initially alarming, might ultimately lead to greater understanding. Selka turned back to her work, a new series of experiments already forming in her mind. The encounter with humanity had changed her perspective, expanded her scientific horizons. Whatever came next, whether peaceful exchange or renewed tension, she would face it with the same commitment to knowledge and ethics that had guided her actions thus far. For in the vast tapestry of the universe, the threads that connected sentient species, curiosity, discovery, the drive to understand, were stronger than the biological differences that set them apart. And in that understanding lay the hope for a future where rust was not a symbol of destruction, but merely another phenomenon to be studied, understood, and ultimately transcended.